All right, everyone, it's time to weigh in yet again on yesterday's Colorado Supreme Court decision. Of course, they ruled that Donald Trump, as an insurrectionist, was disqualified from the primary ballot there, even up to and including disqualifying any write-in votes for Donald Trump. I suspect that he'll win on a write-in campaign anyway. I see a lot of fear-mongering about this spreading to other states as though the Supreme Court wouldn't be likely to put the genie back in the bottle. And there's one big reason why. The Supreme Court has an easy way out. They can be totally vacant as far as any ruling on the Insurrection Act itself. Of course, some legal scholars, they say that it's not even in action at this time. It's basically a relic of Reconstruction. Others agree or disagree with the concept that a president would actually be the kind of sworn public official that would even fall under the purview of the Insurrection Act. And so you've got questions as to whether legally it would even be applicable. The Supreme Court doesn't need to actually rule on that. All they have to do is point out that Donald Trump was never charged with or found guilty of anything that would fall under the Insurrection Act in that manner. Cut and dry, very easy. The court has the votes quite clearly to do that. The lower court had already ruled in Colorado that it was unlawful for them to do this, and it was overturned by the state Supreme Court in an entirely partisan decision. We can probably presume that SCOTUS will reverse that decision. Secondly, this has to do with the primaries, not with the general election. I was unaware of the fact that a state Supreme Court had purview over a function that is effectively run by a party. That is, the primary system and the caucuses in the country are separate from the general election. The general election falls completely under the general legal purview. Supreme Courts, the U.S. government, the FEC, and so forth. That's under their purview. The parties, though, are capable of tinkering around with their primary systems almost to a whim. So I was unaware that a state Supreme Court was capable of doing that for the purposes of a primary. Certainly for a general election they would potentially have that purview, but again, you've got multiple layers of this being inapplicable. Either the particular provision is only for the Reconstruction era, so it's no longer even, relevant. It doesn't apply situationally because Trump was never charged with such a crime, and it may not even apply to presidents even if he were. That being said, I have a sneaking suspicion this will backfire. I think that Trump will win in Colorado anyway, and then the party has to grapple with the fact that it's at odds with the Colorado State Supreme Court, assuming absent a SCOTUS decision before them. Trump, by then, I think, will have run the field, and I think that he's going to gain support because of this. I think he gains support because one of the big selling points is, hey, look at me, I'm being persecuted, the system is corrupt, and they're probably doing that for a reason. You've got yet another arrow in the quiver of people who believe that Donald Trump is being uniquely persecuted and that it ain't for the reason that he's a unique villain. Again, I go back to the concept that I've spoken of before. I can believe that a system that's filled with bankers and politicians and media moguls and shit that I know are corrupt. I've got a million stories about proof of them being corrupt. I can believe that they're corrupt and Trump is standing in their way. Not necessarily that he doesn't also engage in, corrupt behavior. Probably did commit business fraud a time or two. The mogul from the 80s, the writings on the wall, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. Or I can believe that this is the mainline view that they're peddling, that Donald Trump is a unique villain. He's the more mentally bereft version of Adolf Hitler, and that the system, comprised of those people that start wars and screw with the tax system and leave the border defenseless, and all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that they suddenly grew a conscience. And they said, well, this unique villain is so much more corrupt than us. We've got to band together to stop him. I don't believe that, though. I think that I think that people who are already on the fence and they're like, well, maybe I can vote for Trump, like they're not 100% sure, I think are going to flock to him now because how much more transparent can you get? This is literal election interference. The fundamental funny part, the irony, is that supposedly Donald Trump attempted to interfere with the 2016 election via Russia. Now we have blatant and obvious election interference in the Colorado case. We were told that Trump on J6 attempted to start an insurrection again. There's literally nothing to go on with that. There's a reason he was never charged thus, because he never incited anyone. Meanwhile, you have a legal insurrection right now in which you have 4 persecutorial multi-felony cases against him. At the same time, you've got a bunch of states attempting to keep him entirely off the ballot. By the way, 3 of those cases fell through already. They were shot down. Only Colorado so far has upheld it. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe a couple of other states do. But then, at some point it triggers an automatic SCOTUS review. I'm hopeful that they'll see the light and use a limited ruling. Because the other possibility is they say, well, the Insurrection Act doesn't exist anymore. It's kaput. It's Reconstruction era. Okay, well, now you've got a real big problem because now it doesn't apply to all of those lower-level sworn-in officials, and so they could engage in sedition of some sort and then run for office. That's a problem. If they uphold this Colorado decision, you're handing unfettered power to largely partisan state Supreme Courts to decide who can and cannot run for any office they should so choose. Well, then you've just converted our republic into a judicial system in which the courts effectively run your elections, which I don't think is necessarily the greatest idea. By the way, to the liberals celebrating the possibility that happens, you realize there are more red states than there are blue states, correct? And not all those swing states would go your way in such a situation. To have Supreme Court justices at the state level tampering with the primaries is just awe-strikingly stupid. I would point out that so far, to my knowledge, Nikki Haley has not weighed in on this. If she did, she'd probably applaud it. DeSantis called it out. Ramaswamy not only called it out, but refused to appear on the ballot in Colorado unless Trump was put back on. That's, by the way, a masterful move. Even Chris Christie weighed in and said that it was a bad decision. He minced his words and said, well, the court shouldn't defeat Donald Trump, the voters should defeat Donald Trump. Well, okay, it passes the smell test. At the very least, you're saying the decision is wrong, if not necessarily for the most moral of reasons. I think it will backfire, though. I have the sneaking suspicion that Trump will grow his support, not only nationally, but ironically in Colorado, and then you're going to have a bizarre day where the day of the Colorado primary, we get the results and find out that Donald Trump won somewhere in the 40s on a write-in effort, and that those delegates are going to be apparently not allocated at all. Or that because of the Colorado State Supreme Court, again, absent an expedited SCOTUS decision, because, it's almost next year. We're getting down to the wire here as far as when voting begins. Even though Colorado is not one of the first states, they have their vote. It's in spring. You're gonna have a surreal moment where, in order to defend democracy, a state Supreme Court has suspended democratic proceedings within one of its states. I think that would be odd. I think that would be unfortunate and bizarre and probably rather unhelpful for the social alienation level in our republic at this time. Things are hyper-partisan enough. This takes the cake, though. This is election interference, the real kind. That's about all. Peace out.